There we go. Hello, and welcome to Indiepocalypse Radio. I am your host, Andrew, and I had a fun new surprise that I was not expecting, which was all my audio out was muted on Discord because of a presentation I did recently that didn't want to double up on my audio on accident because I was using OBS to spit stuff out. But this week is, or this not, or at least this intro was a soft theme of international music to celebrate the fact that I will not be here next week because I will be instead, I'll be here, but the radio show won't be here because I'll be live streaming the local scene showcase, showcasing stuff from all over the world, And honestly, it happened by accident. This show. This playlist ended initially with a Mission of Burma song, and I was like, I could just swap out one track here for that Spanish disco tech music real quick, and then just change it all up entirely, and so I did. But speaking of changing it up entirely, I'm going to stop running my mouth and introduce our first guest of the show, who you may know from issue 33 of Indiepocalypse, with Quantum Bummer Blues, is Heather Cullop. Oh, did I say it? Heather, welcome to the show.
It's Cullop, yes. Hello, thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being on the show, and also a hearty congratulations for something I learned just last week when I was doing a presentation, that you are also in the Hand-Eye Society Mixtape 3.
Oh yeah, I was in that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's we were talking a little bit in the pre-show about how it's like, hey, the thing I want, like small press zine culture in games, is like it's coming up, it's starting to emerge,
Mm-hmm.
you're starting to coalesce, and I think part of that is like seeing people who are it's the zine anthology thing. It's like I got my same story in multiple different anthologies,
Right. Yeah, hopefully it gets around.
Right. Double dipping
Yeah.
or double and triple dipping any way you can get.
Yeah.
I have a thing that I'm saying very publicly so I can force myself to do it. I very much want to, and I'm aiming for September of 2023 to just basically do an online game fair.
Oh.
Kind of like, listen, I'll be honest, I saw the Short Box Comic Fair, and I was like, I could do that with games. And I was like, I'm going to do that with games. So speaking of games, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
I heard about it through an artist named Ben Saint, who was in the
Yes.
Indiepocalypse a couple months ago. He had posted about it on Twitter. It was like, oh, this guy Andrew, he's doing a lot to get small indie artists coverage. And then I was like, I'm a small indie artist. I could use coverage. And then, so I got in it.
Yes,
I submitted my game, yeah.
And you were a victim you're the second victim of what we're gonna call Andrew accidentally deletes an entry.
Oh, seriously?
Yes.
That's funny.
It was you, and who was the other one? Trying to remember, but anyway, because I think when you resubmitted, I was like, wait a minute, isn't this game in here? Or like I had I got to the end of all the submissions. I'm like, wait a minute, like, there's a game missing from here.
Mhm. Damn. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess I'm glad I was stubborn and I submitted it again.
Yeah. No, I think I would have just emailed you at that point because it's happened before.
Okay.
It's like been a weird, because I use sheets basically to do it, and sometimes when I'm shuffling everybody around, very very rarely or occasionally it will like accidentally I'll put a cell over another cell,
Hmm.
but very rarely, and which is to say twice, I will not notice that I did that with also an entry that I wanted to include.
Oh, well, it worked out in the end, so
Yeah,
can't complain too much.
no, I do this thing once a month. It's easy to get caught out and then get caught back in.
Mm.
But speaking of getting caught in, maybe tell me a little bit about Quantum Bummer Blues.
Okay, so it's like this. It's like a arcade uh, sort of narrative sort of thing. It's like I went for like a 50-50 split between like arcade gameplay and like strong narrative focus on
Yeah.
it. And it's this game where you're playing as like a trail of blood, and like the blood is pouring out of this like dead girl who's stuck in a like a space prison, and your blood is like pouring like underground through the walls, and you're trying to escape prison. And it's this sort of a story about sort of like prison and like mental institutions, and like sort of writing from the perspective of like trying to be like empathetic to people that are like, in prison,
Right.
in like that sort of thing. Uh, so it's a lot. Like it's a
Yeah.
it's a lot of things.
I think
Uh,
that's the beauty of short form art in like it's like all it's a lot of things in a very small package. Like clearly someone had like there's a lot of ideas all going on at once, and to contrast into some things that are like 80 hours long and have one idea.
Exactly. Yeah, that's my biggest pet peeve with games at the moment. I just want, like with Quantum Bummer Blues, I really try to pare everything down to be like as simple as possible. Like I chose like the game is basically running in like an Atari resolution. Like
Yeah.
I want as much like ideas in as small of a space as I can possibly manage, you know?
Right, right. I think
Right.
I think you get that a lot in independent art because maybe
Right, exactly. Yeah.
they feel like everything could be their last also.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or just like the lack of. So speaking of, I have a very specific question from an anonymous.
Ooh.
What inspired you? Because this does not technically this does not address you, but also technically it does not apply to either of our other guests.
Okay.
Which is what inspired you to use blood as the character you control?
Oh, it was it was based on a nightmare I had, where I was like killed by the mafia, and like as I was laying there dying, I was still like conscious, and I was trying to like find a way to signal for help. And as soon as I woke up from that, I was like, wow, that was a really weird nightmare. I should write that down because maybe
Yeah,
I can make a game out of it. And then I sort of sat on it for a while because like the initial idea, it was just like it would probably just be something like the game Ghost Trick. I don't know if you're familiar with
yes,
that.
very familiar with Ghost Trick.
Yeah, yeah. So, but like, and I like Ghost Trick, but I didn't want to like copy that game. So
Yeah,
the blood concept just kind of sat in my notes app for a while. Um, but then I was listening to a Johnny Cash record about a year ago, the one he recorded in Folsom Prison.
that's very very apropos you say that because I was thinking exactly about that album in
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when you
So
described the game.
yeah. So the final track on that album, it's Greystone Chapel, which was written by one of the inmates in the prison at the time. And the chorus is, "Inside the walls of prison, my body may be, but my Lord has set my soul free." And as soon as I heard that, it made me think about some stuff that happened to me a few years ago, and it made me think about that blood concept. And I was like, and listening to that album in that moment was like my vision from God, I guess, where I was like,
Right.
I should make a game about this, like, and that's when I committed to it.
Yeah, I was. It's nice when you see like connections, and it feels very gratifying to be like, yes, that I was
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
of Folsom Prison Blues when I saw like it had like it was a very mental uh,
Right, exactly. Well, I should
connection.
say that the name Quantum Bummer Blues, I'm a big fan of this folk artist. Her name is Judy Sill. She had a song that she wrote when she was in prison, called Dead Time Bummer Blues, and that's where the name Quantum Bummer Blues comes from.
Yeah.
I really I like bummer blues as a phrase a lot, so I just
Yes.
stole it.
It's got a very good
Yeah,
like I don't know what to call it, but like
alliteration to it,
yes, great mouth
just a
feel.
cadence. Yeah, yeah, great mouthfeel.
Yeah, that was sorry. Anyway, I opened up a new tab. This is opening up tabs of looking at artists. So look at Judy Still because there's infinite music and I don't know all of it.
I love Judy Sill. She's a beautiful voice, and like her song "The Phoenix" was like a huge inspiration while I was working on that game. I think like lyrically, that is just like the prettiest song I've ever. a huge like inspiration in terms of like for like the actual like writing of the game came a lot from like gospel music and like country music and folk music. Like the game opens on like a quote from Neil Young, pretty big on the game. So stuff like that.
Yeah, I think there's I say it a lot on this show. It's very important that people take influences for games on things that are not games.
Exactly. I think that's uh I always take for every game I've made, like the initial inspiration has always been music. And
Yeah.
then like I work in some game like inspirations, but I think a big problem, and especially in a lot of like you see it in like the like indie projects that are like bigger scale sort of thing,
Yeah.
like double A sort of thing, where like you can tell the only like reference point they have is like other video games, and like the you can tell like the initial pitch was just like, oh, what if we made like Super Metroid, but it was also Dark Souls, and I just think
Right.
that kind of stuff is just like it's just kind of played out and a little boring. You know what I
Right.
mean?
You can see the bones of all the other games that they put together to make that game.
Right, which I feel like is kind of missing the point of
Yeah.
like being an independent artist.
What
You know
if
what I
what if we
mean?
made Binding of Isaac, but it kind of looked like Don't Starve,
Yeah, no, no.
but also it was kind of it was using like the wholesome vibes.
Oh God.
Yeah. It feels like you feel, I don't know, an emptiness, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is,
Which is
but that's the weird thing about games is that they can still be enjoyable to play even if they're kind of empty.
yeah, yeah, and then it always kind of stings. Like this year, the game Sifu
Yeah.
came out, and like like I think that game's like aesthetically like fine, but like I know like gameplay wise, I really like what it's doing, but I just think the visuals are so like drab to me, and I have a
Right.
hard time. I just had a hard time like sticking with it. I haven't beaten it yet, even though it's like my thing, like arcade beat 'em up. Like I'm there, but I haven't felt that pull from it. You know?
Well, speaking of your thing being arcade beat 'em up, but
Yeah.
also make art games, we got a question from Hot Pocket HPE,
Ooh.
which is philosophy on balancing dynamism versus constructed challenges in actiony gameplay. For example, in Quantum Bomber Blues, how much the chaotic bouncing of atoms contributes versus the fixed level geometry. Do you prefer leaning one way or the other? Seems to
Oh,
me
for
that
me,
many older games, classic shmups, FPS, etc., had strong level design tradition, but modern contemporaries, and modern is in some good scare quotes,
mhm.
don't focus on it as much. Agree or disagree? Reasons for this? It's a very long question, but
That is a very long question. Hot Pocket, that guy will answer or ask a long question.
yeah,
Uh, but uh, so I guess the philosophy, what he was talking about. I came at it from as far as like level design is concerned. I do not care about level design. I'm just
right,
not interested. All I care about is like mechanics and like weird, very dynamic uh, mechanics like that. Like all of the level designs were just like either drawings that I literally like scribbled out on my drawing tablet in
right,
like 5 minutes, or they were like photographs. Like one of the levels is literally just a picture of my dog that I like compressed down and put into the game. And it was sort of like just because I think it's like that's a funny thing to do because like most games just aren't even there. But also like I wanted to sort of see and like sort of prove to myself that I could make something uh, that mechanically is like so strong that the level design is completely irrelevant. You know what I
right.
mean? Like regardless, like a level could be a picture of my dog or like a picture of my open mouth, and the game would still be fun to play. You know what I mean? Because one of my biggest pet peeves in a lot of games is just level design in general, and when level design constricts mechanics, and
Right.
when uh, uh, there's always that one segment where there's like one mechanic that you love using, but because of the level design, you can't use that mechanic. I hate that. That always bugs me.
Yeah, that I'm thinking more about the idea of the arbitrary branching path, that has the
Mhm.
goodies on it.
Yeah, no.
Of like why do those exist? Like what function do they serve really?
Mhm.
And like,
Yeah,
and I mean, if as a fan of beat 'em ups, I would say beat 'em ups have zero level design in them generally.
and that's great.
They are
That's
flat
great.
planes.
uh, yeah,
Yeah, because they're strictly mechanical sorts of things.
right. I'm all about those mechanics, and one of the things with Quantum Bumper Blues was like if like because like the mechanics are static throughout basically like the entire game, right? And they don't really change all that much. And so a big question I had was like, how am I going to like evolve these mechanics? How can I make, because like every screen, you start your blood, you go up into the open area, then you like smash the atoms. Every screen has 9 atoms on it, so it's all
Yeah,
the same. Um, and but so I implemented sort of a weird sort of dynamic difficulty system. So like even if the mechanics aren't changing, like your relationship to the mechanics are changing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, yeah. So it's sort of there is this sort of build up intention and sort of like your game plan is always changing, even if the mechanics aren't. Which was something that I was trying to go for, and I think I sort of pulled it off.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
at least two anthologies agree.
Uh,
Um, speaking of taking pictures of your dog,
yes.
we got a question from I'm going to say Bean or Ben.
Okay.
It's see the name is Ben, and I would say this word is Ben because it has two e's. Anyway,
Hmm.
um, graphics being the first thing done in a video game, it's a solid meme for a week. But is there actually anything you get done with early that would be interesting to mention?
Um, I I mean like the graphics are like almost like with all my games it's like I basically just use placeholder sprites and like I at some point I plan on changing it but then I'm like I just go against it and I just use the placeholder sprites forever.
Yeah,
But like with the way I design games, like I don't have design documents. I write down very few of my ideas. So it's like game design and just game making in general is like a very for me is like a very iterative, slow process. So there's very little that I get done like early on.
right.
Honestly, like Quantum Bumper Blues was not like in like a what I would consider like a shippable state until like 3 days before like the release date. Like
Right.
it came together. It did not come together at all until like right before I had announced that I was going to release it.
I have a similar. I take a similar path or a very different path to get there, but I have a similar
Mhm.
endpoint where nothing's done until basically it's done.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I don't make vertical slices.
Yeah, no.
That is so. You answered another question inadvertently that maybe
Oh,
we'll hear
really?
a question of John's that we will hear in full perhaps with a later guest. But the final question we have from Tony Finale. Um,
Hmm.
what are your fave and least favorite JRPGs?
Um, Gosh, favorite, I would say my favorite is Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter. Uh, I
I'm
really
very.
loved. Oh, what's that?
I was gonna say I'm very close to playing Dragon Quarter.
I highly recommend it. I have not finished it,
Yeah.
but what I played of it was extremely good. If you like Resident Evil at all, it's pretty close to that.
Oh, I've been
Um,
playing Evil Within
oh,
lately,
really?
and
Oh, oh,
I
go on.
I was gonna say I the second one is kind of like my ideal for survival horror. I think.
Really?
Yeah,
I've heard mixed things about that one.
it is. There is mixed stuff to it, but the movement. If we talk about mechanics, like it feels like I move like I think a horror character should move. Like I can always, you can always kind of retreat,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like that scrambly sort of horror thing where it's either you're ahead or if you're not ahead, you're already behind.
Right, right. Yeah, that's the stuff.
That which is like my very specific thing that I want.
uh, yeah, well,
Yeah, tell me about Dragon.
Dragon.
Yeah,
Yeah, Dragon Quarter's like that. It's got that Resident Evil like limited save. It has like ink ribbon system. It's got this like uh this weird meter where it's like constantly ticking up, and if it ever hits 100%, like the game is over and you have to restart the entire game. So it's like really brutal like that. So I really like that's one of my favorite JRPGs. I also love uh, Earthbound, um, the original Dragon Quest. Um, I think that's probably off the top of my head it for favorites. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if I have a least favorite JRPG. Like, I'm not a fan of the genre, but there's nothing sticks out in my mind as like I played Shin Megami Tensei 5 when it came out last year. I thought that game was pretty bad. Did not care for it. Uh, but generally, I think JRPGs, I just think I'm just okay on. I just think a lot
Right.
of them are just like, all right, not my cup of tea. Uh,
Yeah.
so
No.
that's my answer.
That's the beauty of genres.
Right.
It's the
Yeah.
same. It's the same thing across everything. Someone will go very much like someone could tell you all the 18 million subgenres of jazz, and someone else would be like, I guess it's fine if someone's playing in the background.
Right.
Someone else is like, no, you don't understand how poison works in this game versus these other games. It's all this one's
Oh
percentile.
wait, I forgot to mention Sweet Home. I just had a video about that on my YouTube channel. I forgot to mention that one. That one's one of my favorite JRPGs.
Sweet Home.
Also, yeah, also a horror-ish
Yeah.
adjacent thing. I think that's it.
Oh, well, perfect. Well, that's that perfectly times for roughly the end of our 20 minutes here, Heather.
Nice.
I know it goes down smooth and quick.
Yeah, it was a lot quicker than I imagined.
No, yeah, it's and I imagine you'll stick around. You're not going anywhere.
No, I'm sticking around.
Oh,
Yes.
perfect. Well,
Mhm.
thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for being involved in this whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
We will be back in where's this thingy here? Roughly 2 minutes and 47 seconds. All right, everyone. Goodbye for now. Oh, hello, and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Teaminade with "Sadder Than You." I did not realize that they are a local band. Support your local scene. Support your local bands. I also got a surprise when I saw the review of friend of the show Nate Kiernan was like, why does this picture look familiar? And there was a review from him in there. A nice heady one, a nice thick one, which was it's a good album. Anyway, speaking of good albums, games are kind of like albums in that they are art that we enjoy, and and our next guest also made a game for Indiepocalypse. Um, it's Robin. You may know from issue 32 of Indiepocalypse with Spectog. This is my Spectrography.
There's no specific way to pronounce it, so you can really say it anyway, because I only wrote it down. I never
Yes.
said it out loud.
I've only also written it down and never said it out loud.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome to the show, Robin.
Hi, it's really lovely to be here.
It's great to have you here. So I can't ask you the usual the burning Indiepocalypse question because you are a commissioned guest here on the show.
I am, yes.
So the question is, did you know what Indiepocalypse what it was before I emailed you about it?
Yes, I did actually.
Okay.
One of the game developers I follow, I think their handle is Cultisti.
Yes.
Cultisti? Yeah, Cultisti. I had seen that they had, number one, their games are sick as hell.
Yes.
Number two, I had seen that they were in Indiepocalypse a couple of times.
Yes.
And I was like, that's really cool. Also, all the games in Indiepocalypse are really cool.
Yes. Cultisti is one of those rare repeats.
Yeah, and I was like, I wonder if this will ever come back round again. And then I get your email, and I was like, wait a second, hold on, I know this.
It came directly to you, in fact.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I wish I could get a lottery ticket one day, and then one day the lottery commission knocked on your door. It's like, here you are, congratulations.
There you
go. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's heartening to hear. I am definitely I think you were the first time where I was. You were like the first entry of my different approach. It was just like, what if I just like. Because for a long time I was like, well, for commissioned games, I should find people who have larger followings than me, but who I can technically still afford. And I think when I had emailed you, because I was like, what if I just find people I like? I just start emailing.
Nice.
And then like, what if it doesn't really matter how many followers people have and whether they're gonna build my following? What if I just like people's work and I want to support it further?
Yeah, that's really lovely.
Yeah, you were also one of my I I think I had subtweeted basically occasionally a couple times that you had no clear contact info.
Yeah,
So
I don't.
until like one time, because you and a couple other people I'll click on like once every month or so and be like, do they have an email yet? Do they have open DMs yet? And then one time like you had a website with an email. I was like, oh my god, finally.
Yeah, the website's very new.
Yes.
Yeah.
But speaking of very new, your game is also very new because it's like the second newest, in fact.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about spectrography. I had it the first time, then I forgot how to say it.
I also go spectrography, something like that.
But it looks good, and you get the idea of it when you look at it and read it.
You do. So I really enjoy making rhythm games, but I'm not very good at writing music.
Yeah.
And I had been talking to my partner about making something in Pico 8 with them, where we send each other what we had done and like build something off of that. But then they started to make a ghost detective game, and I was like, wait, I kind of want to make something with ghosts in it.
Yeah.
And this idea of mixing rhythm with kind of like a light-hearted, bouncy kind of high score game just kind of came about because of that.
Yeah.
I rarely start with art first or any aesthetic first. I always start with code first. So I had coded this mechanic and I had coded all the different enemy AI because I wanted to have that in.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's something missing here. That I don't know what it is. And then my partner goes, I can write music for it. And I was like, are you sure? And they were like, yeah, that'd be really great. And she wrote some lovely music for it and lovely SFX,
Yes.
sound effects. Difficult word to say. And,
right. One of those things you often see and not say.
and don't say, yeah. And it came together, ending up being more rhythmy than I expected at the start. But I really, really like the direction it went into because I think it's one of the proudest games I've ever the proudest I've ever been of any game I've ever made because it's so like clean and fun and bouncy. And every time I play it, I'm like, it's me and my partner's game.
Yeah, that's why I always like turn my nose up at like people who are like, oh, you can't make good indie games for less than millions of dollars. I'm like, you as being on the receiving end, I do not have a lot of money, but
Yeah, I get what you mean.
but you still like very much made like a very good it's there, it's done, it's a game, it's complete.
Yeah.
I mean,
It is.
And you didn't spend 6 years of your life on it.
Nah, did not have to.
No, you spent at most 3 months of your life, if that.
Yeah. I think the thing I learned just making games in general is if I want to complete something, I have to number one know my workflow.
Right.
Number two, there's just like this idea of condensing an idea to the core mechanic. So stripping away all the side bits and bring it down to the core mechanic.
Right.
And then do that again and again until you get a very tight loop that you can make quickly. And then sometimes I'll make that loop, leave that game for like weeks, months, years, and suddenly I'm like, wait, I have a narrative. I need this thing. Where is it? And then scour through all my folders to find it,
Right.
and link it to a narrative.
And having that like tight code like base also means that you can reuse that stuff later.
Yeah.
like maybe you never find that narrative, but maybe you do find a different narrative that has like this, that uses like a film shutter thing, like time shutters,
Mm.
And you can always, so that is that segues perfectly into John's question finally appearing. How did you know you were on the right track during development? And do you have a design doc you're drawing from, or is your work mostly improvisational?
Oh, it's 100% improvisational. I do not have a design document at all.
Yeah.
I scribble notes on a piece of paper and I lose that piece of paper and then I rewrite those notes.
Right.
That's pretty much how I do it. I'm a little bit disorganized, but I found the process that works is I get playtesting in as soon as possible, just to feel what's fun about the game, what I don't like, what people do enjoy, because the way I play the game will be different to how everyone else does.
Right.
So initially, when you're taking pictures of the ghosts, you could only take pictures of one ghost at a time. But I had the people I was giving it to playtest say we would like taking pictures of a bunch of ghosts at the same time because it makes it more exciting and it makes and like kind of helps the difficulty even out. And I was like, okay, I'll try that. And I really loved it. And
Yeah.
I was like, wait, this is great.
Right. Right. Especially with something that uses like a specific enemy AI.
Yeah.
Because you know how it works. You
Yeah.
sometimes don't know how other people will react to it when you like, oh, I know exactly how all these enemies behave, so I know how to avoid them
Yeah.
or best. But someone's like is unsure about things, and I've realized that in playing like a lot of older games where the enemies like don't basically have zero AI, they just kind of move back and forth, but like the threat comes from you not realizing that.
Yeah. It just I think it's good to have some thing you can go to when you're making designs so you know where your previous like ideas were. Like I
Right.
have a little book that I handwrite all my designs in fountain pen that has purple ink because that makes me excited and makes me actually write in it.
Yeah.
And I'll use that to write out mechanics if I have them in the middle of the night because it's rarely ever during the day.
No. Right.
Um
No, because you can't. You're thinking about them. You have to.
yep. Think about them constantly.
I
So
have
yeah.
I have similarly notebooks that I just like will sketch out the rough of like what I want a game to be. Like these are all the things that
Yeah.
I want them to be, and then here they all are.
Sometimes you have to sift through the like ramblings of a tired person
Yes, right.
to find the good stuff, but it's still good. It's still very delightful to look
Right,
through
right. You're like, what did this person mean by this? What?
it. What do you mean?
But at 11 at night, it made a lot of sense. It was like this. It was the world's most important revelation.
It made perfect sense at like 2 a.m.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but so your approach to graphics, to go back to the beans question, what do you prefer to get done early on? Is it and like you said,
Ooh.
is it just like that, those mechanics, like you try to get the core mechanic there?
Yep. If I do any of the art first, I will not get the game done.
Yeah.
I need to get the coding done first. And then so my method of doing stuff is I plan it for a maximum of 2 days and then I leave it and then I code that mechanic to see if it's fun, just prototype it.
Yeah.
And then it's like always ugly, it's a bit messy. And then once I get a little bit itchy, like to draw, I'll draw a little bit of placeholder art or sometimes some of the final art.
Yeah.
And then I finish the programming or clean it up, add the final art, then add the effects and music.
Right, because there's sometimes you can only look at your weird little cubes wandering around.
Yeah. There's so much you can stare at cubes
Yeah.
until you lose your mind a little bit.
Right. And I mean, I have fancy cubes that have lines on them, so I know which way the cubes are facing. But still, I can't. Eventually, I like to put a person or something there.
Yeah, just to feel something.
Right. To get back to Hot Pocket's question, what is your philosophy on balancing dynamism and versus constructed challenges in actiony gameplay?
It's difficult,
Yeah.
I think. It's really, really difficult to find a balance with these kinds of things. I think what I find most interesting is the games I make, specifically spectrography,
Yeah.
however you pronounce it, um, has this thing where I wanted to make the arena a different shape to like reflect the ghostliness of it, but a circular arena gets like mitigates quite a lot of the problems that you
Right.
could do that you could get like somebody hiding in the corner just like using their camera to take pictures of stuff, whereas a circular arena makes the player move around more.
Yeah,
So
and it
like I
kind of looks
think
like a camera lens.
yeah, exactly. It's just really cool. I just really excited about this game. Um, so I think I spend a lot more time on building out a mechanic and then building a surrounding to uh better fit in with it, I think.
Yeah,
So the mechanic is first and the enjoyment of that, what makes it fun, is first. And then I build everything else around that because the core gameplay loop, the core mechanic, not loop, the
yeah,
core gameplay thing, the core thing that I'm enjoying about it is what I need to be the focus of the game.
right.
Otherwise, it all kind of falls apart for me.
Yeah, yeah, because it's like if you don't enjoy your art, who is going to? You know,
Yeah.
that's that's I think the argument for both like enjoying your thing and also sort of like making things that you are passionate about because like not the things that you think people. And it's working. It's on the itch fresh tab. I noticed a couple times, which is it's I was gonna
Photography?
yeah
Really?
yeah you're above me even
What?
you're above at least in my view.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. It's I think it was technically. I think I might be on the no. They only have one tab of fresh on the thing, but yeah. I like to see where these things go. You know, I get excited about. It's the hard part I find about talking about Indiepocalypse sometimes is because I feel like am I selling things to people too much? But it's really just I really like these games, and I get excited when like if people are doing good. You know.
Yeah. It's nice to be able to celebrate other people who are creating cool stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's more than just like yourself. I think that kind of gets lost sometimes in games, maybe, or like
Mm,
it's very easy to focus on like the a certain level of developer, or they have to go through your anyway. But it's there.
mm,
I wish it all the future best as well.
yeah. Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just having a good time making games. I
yeah,
make them for me and like my friends. So when other people like them, I'm like, oh, that's really sick. I don't know how to respond.
yeah. That's I think we are approaching that point where more people sort of want that out of games. You know, they want this sort of hey. This wasn't made for a collection of trends, you know.
Yeah.
You did not make that because ghost and photography games are really popular right now, so you combine the two of them.
I just like ghosts.
Yeah,
Big fan of them.
right. You just like rhythm games, which which
Yeah.
which never technically ever go out of style, but
Yeah, they don't.
aren't like in vogue perhaps right now.
Mm.
But there's always diehards I think looking for rhythm games
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
people love music.
Yeah, and it's really cool to work. Oh, my favorite thing is working with composers who are just really, really like, oh, I've never worked with a composer whose music I haven't loved.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I hate this game. This game jam is killing me. And then near the end of it, I get the music, and I'm like, you know what? Everything is good in the world. My crops
Yes.
have watered. My skin is clear. Everything is fantastic.
There's nothing more powerful than just like a good soundtrack can make you forget about a lot of problems in a game.
For sure. Yeah.
You like, well, this game is not great. It doesn't make any sense, but I like listening to it.
Yeah. I could just listen to it for quite a while.
Yeah, and maybe it just lives beyond the game itself. The soundtrack endures, where the game
Yeah.
languishes away.
Yeah.
But speaking of things that you love and things that people often love the soundtracks of, Robin, I need to know. Fave, least fave, JRPGs.
Oh wow. Um,
Sneaking it in there last
definitely,
minute. Think you're
definitely
gonna
not
escape this
googling
one?
stuff. I was really like panicking looking for one. Bravely Default, I
Yeah.
think, is the one because it's the one I used to play with my twin for the longest time. So it's the one I feel the connected to the most. I didn't play a lot of games growing up.
Yeah.
I also don't play a lot of games now because only 2 years ago did I get a PC that could run a lot of games. So I spent most of my time on Itch and Newgrounds, just like scouring stuff,
Yeah,
doing
that's.
stuff there.
I think that's actually a good perspective, honestly.
Yeah, it's quite nice. It's quite fun.
uh, Coticity we mentioned earlier, the second entry and why there was a second entry. If people were like, "Hey, Andrew told me I can't be in here twice. Why was someone else in there?" It was for the Koosh collaboration issue, and uh,
Yeah.
in that one, pretty much all the artists I got that Koosh provided, like none of them play games at all.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah.
when like half the creative team is like, "Oh, I don't play video games at all. What's a video game?" You get like this completely different kind of perspective going into things
Yeah.
of like how do you tell a story, or how do you make something, or like when you're not so tethered to the language of what games are.
Yeah, genuinely, I think that it's quite fun to not know anything about games because I have very low game literacy. I'm also really bad at them.
Yeah,
So I get to build games that are fun for me and my twin, who are both bad at games, but both
that's
shit at them.
and that's like a crucial perspective, because I think people overprescribe rules of game design. You know,
Yeah.
I think there's like I think there are some like rules to art making, about like that 180 rule, I think is what they call it, right? In film, where you try to make sure people are always on the same side so you don't get confused.
Yeah.
But I think there's some base important things but like people over assume, and you and
Yeah.
you and countless other developers are proof that, hey, don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it. It's fine.
You don't need to know the entire history of video games in order to make a video game.
You do not.
In fact, you don't even need to know anything about video games to make a video game.
You really don't.
It's a fresh new medium, and excited to have people like you in it, Robin. glad
Thank you.
glad you're here. Glad you were on the show. And would you believe it? Our time here on the show is actually ending.
It's a pleasure. It's been lovely.
Yes, I hope you can stick around for a little. As
Yep.
we head to our next guest, and we will be back in as soon as I find Fubar. I found it. Well, this one's only like a minute and 36. All right, see you,
Ooh.
everyone.
Yeah, you'll
Probably
be
not that
fine.
hard. Yeah.
Hello.
Thank you. You did
Hello,
really great, by
welcome
the way,
back
yeah.
to Indiepocalypse Radio.
Oh shit!
I,
I'm already on.
that was Aggie with Jerry Hates Me. Speaking of hates, this next guest I don't hate, as it turns out. Hopefully.
Great segue. Hello.
Hello.
What's up?
Okay. So this is we're gonna hit with guest. Why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, my name is Ziad.
Zia, thank you.
I've made a game. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's fine.
I was like, is it Z or Zai? There's one way to figure it out, and it's to have you say it yourself.
Yeah. It's like it's a tongue twister. I admit. It's a very regular problem, but like not a big deal. Not something I'm hung up on. Yeah.
No, I'm similar. Not my first name, but my last name. It's my whole. Someone I had never met before. Who I wrote my name to for something, came back and said exactly how you're supposed to say it, and I was very surprised. But I know you may know. You may know this guest from issue 33, also issue 33 of Indiepocalypse.
Yes.
With now here's another pronunciation. Is it Disco EP? Do we?
Disco EP.
Okay,
Yeah.
we don't.
You know,
we don't get cute with
yeah,
the
sorry.
asterisks.
Yeah, originally in my head I sort of imagined the EP like just being silent.
Yeah.
But it is more intuitive to just say disco EP, with the way I wrote it. So yeah.
Right, and I feel like it implies the aesthetic also of it to call it an EP because it is,
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I guess the idea behind it was that
Yeah, you describe it, not me.
I'm gonna back up a little bit, but a lot of the idea behind the project itself was that I wanted to teach myself making solo games and just programming in general. And you can see in the title, okay, it's an EP, and I put a little star in it, so that made a little asterisk. So maybe that tells you it's kind of space themed. But then just the formatting, it sort of looks like a programming function.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the idea behind it.
Okay. Yeah, for pre-Indiepocalypse, I was flirting around with this idea of the video game EP, of like this idea of like, here's the core of ideas of my game, but a much shorter version of it, but that's still a complete game. Because pre-Indiepocalypse, I was like, well, games have to be 6 hours long in order for anyone to care about them.
That's cap.
And I've still not proven that to be false yet, but I'm getting closer.
I'm thinking the ideal length for a game is like 3 hours or less.
I'm thinking the ideal length is 2 minutes long. And
that's fair.
Yeah,
that's a good assessment.
No, I think that it kind of goes anywhere, any sort of length, perhaps.
Of course, yeah. Obviously, I'm shitposting, but
yeah, no. Everything we say here is 100% sincere. I do not ever joke around on this show. This is not for fun. This is like Twitter.com. Everything you say is 100% sincere all the time, and to be taken in the worst faith. But Ziad, to get to the important question that everybody needs to know, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
Actually, Heather told me about it. One time she just randomly DM'd me like, hey, this is a really cool opportunity, blah, blah, you'll probably get in, you should try your luck. That's how I heard about it. There's no deeper story behind it at all. Unfortunately, I was not aware of it prior. But yeah, I submitted and it worked out and it was cool.
Yeah, that's the most direct word of mouth we've ever had on the show, where word of mouth came from a guest 40 minutes ago.
That's how it goes.
That is a lot of I think how it spreads, and I think I found you get a lot of very interesting things when they spread through like other contributors or other submitters, because it's kind of like artists telling artists,
Yeah. Me and Heather have been friends for a while, and we've always been in the habit of giving each other feedback. So that was just kind of a natural extension of that. Yeah.
I also did not plan the show knowing that you two knew each other in the slightest.
Yeah. It was pretty funny how that worked.
Yeah, that is. It's a weird little thing like that. I don't know. Like, I don't have my corkboard, tracing all the relationships between all the indie developers in the world, and being like, who knows who are these people? Who are these connections? And are you part of the Bitsy crew? Are you part of Alt Games? Are you in Paradise Collab? Who's in Paradise Collab? And seeing everyone being where, But, well, let me do a quick refresh real quick just to make sure. No. So, question for you, especially this yours being a more, would you call it mixed media game?
I think that's fair, yeah.
Yeah. What to finalize Bean's question, graphics in games, what do you do first? How do you get done? Like, what do you do?
It's interesting. So I guess with Disco EP specifically, I for those who don't know, it's a 6-track like I said, track.
Yeah, right. We never got around to tell me what this thing is.
Yeah, it's a short little experience made up of 6 different vignettes that vary in terms of art style, in terms of level of interactivity, kind of interactivity, and they tell a single cohesive story. and you can play them back to back like an album. There's a big musical focus, or you can also replay individual tracks again, as I call them.
Yeah.
And I guess in the context of this question, I'll say, yeah, I once I settled on the idea, okay, I want to make this mini album, this like little mini collection of set pieces. I pretty much instantly knew what I wanted to do for each one. But then once I got actually to working on each individual thing, the way I did it was very erratic. I have not been officially diagnosed with ADHD yet, but I have some level of suspicion that there may be something to that.
Right.
Because, yeah, just the way I bounce around between things is very unpredictable sometimes. Um, Again, sometimes I'm just in the mood to do sprites all day, and then another day I just want to work on the camera for this one thing. I get very stuck into that. I guess a good example is the third track, if you've played it, where you're sort of floating in space.
Yeah.
When I did that, obviously the first thing I wanted to figure out is could I even get the visual effect that I wanted? Like, could I even get these star particles sort of floating around in the way that I was sort of imagining? So I actually spent a lot of time experimenting with that before I started on the controls. Now, personally, I'm a pretty mechanics focused person, right? So, uh, in a more traditional process, I would probably, like now that I'm used to the engine and the tools and all that, I would ideally work on the mechanic and like polish that and then figure out everything else sort of around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the context of this, it was very spontaneous.
So speaking of mechanics, do you remember that very long question from Hot Pocket?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, perfect.
About dynamism versus like
yes, thank you.
constrictive
I
design.
just
Yeah.
have to read it again. It's very
Yeah.
long.
Hot Pocket, great guy, by the way. Shout out to him. Yeah, personally, I dislike this feeling in games that I'm just learning inputs, that I'm just memorizing inputs. A series that, I mean, I guess if the thing you're doing is just intrinsically kind of enjoyable, I guess that doesn't have to be bad, right? Um, but something like the Crash games, for example, I appreciate what they do, but just the trial and error nature of them, and again, this feeling, okay, I'm going through the exact same obstacles with absolutely no variation over and over again.
Right.
As I retry stuff, it's not really my cup of tea. I want there definitely to be some kind of dynamic element. Um, but I do appreciate like intentional design. I do really take notice of it when designers sort of get you into very intentional situations and then you can kind of observe them and then decide what you want to do. Like that's obviously like that idea and dynamism, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. I guess maybe Arcane's games are a really good example of that. Where obviously they have these really sandboxy open-ended mechanics, but then clearly the situations are very intentionally set up to encourage certain things. Yeah.
Right. You see, like there are paths, but you see what the paths look like.
Exactly. Yeah. I was playing Weird West the other day, for example, and obviously that's not Arcane, but it's
weird.
I
I
don't
was
butcher
also
his name,
playing Weird West very recently.
nice. Yeah, the director of Prey 2017 worked on that, and obviously you feel that, and it had that exact thing going on, right? Where I could clearly tell, okay, they wanted me to push this barrel in this specific way, right? But because it's because the mechanics have so much nuance and so much granularity to them, there's still a lot of room for different types of outcomes.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like the ideal that I would want to shoot for in design. Yeah.
Right. It feels sort of like a weird analogy, but like in sort of like a good, game master in a tabletop game will give you a lot of like, tools that you can use, and they all feel like viable.
That is a good analogy. Yeah.
And it's just like it's kind of set up like a like a play box, not quite like a
Mm.
sandbox.
Yeah,
But,
I don't have much experience with tabletop stuff, unfortunately, but I mean, I would assume
yeah.
a game master exists for a reason, right? Like if everybody just goes in random directions,
Right, and
uh,
there are plenty of games
yeah.
that are GM-less games, but we're talking like kind of like the kind of game people are most familiar with, I assume.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Because GM-less games, especially if you don't have dice, like at some point, I find myself asking, are these just parlor games? Or like, what is the line between tabletop and parlor game? How
Mm-mm.
thin is it? I don't know, but. So what is your I'm gonna tear through all these questions so I can delete them all and clean so I can get rid of this tab.
Nice.
John's question: your development process, design docs, improv. What are you up to?
That is a good question. See, so Disco EP was my first solo like released project. Obviously, maybe I should mention I'm a game design student. I've done a couple other projects in the context of university in like in a group
Yeah,
capacity where obviously things have to be more organized, right? Because you have to communicate ideas to each other, to your team members, but also to your instructors and stuff.
right.
So you
And they're probably
y-
asking for like
exactly. Yeah,
it's part of
exactly.
your grade.
They yeah, it's not incredibly formal, but you definitely have to show that you're doing something right. And I guess that you do learn a little bit of self-discipline in that. That is pretty valuable.
Yeah,
Because yeah, again, it's the way you do it is relatively open-ended, but because you have to do it, you do think about um presentation a lot, and like you think about the cohesiveness of your ideas. Like, do they, I guess because you're forced to say them out loud, you sort of are also forced to think about, okay, do they even make sense in this way? Maybe that can help you notice discrepancies in your plan so far. Now, that hasn't really translated exactly so far into my solo work. Again, Disco EP was pretty erratic.
right.
Um, but I think I guess once I have like a good idea again, I probably would um start with some kind of document, right? I will say my experience having a static kind of Google Doc is not that helpful. After certain points, um, it's way too hard to update it, right?
Right.
When you keep iterating on the game.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I,
yeah,
I prefer to just kind of like. That's why I like a notebook because I just start writing on a new page and
yeah,
like ignore what I wrote in the past.
yeah. We had like there was one project where we were working with like this whole database kind of thing, and at first it seemed really cool. But then at some point, it was very clearly evident that all of us just got kind of too lazy to import all our ideas and all our progress into that thing. It was
Yeah.
way easier to just talk to each other on Discord about it. Um, so yeah, I think some level of organization is really key with bigger projects, but yeah, it's very hard to have that agree with just human nature sometimes.
Yes. Sometimes um, people don't want to be as organized or like in that kind of specifically structured sort of way, or
Mm,
like it just does not work for you in that kind of like that process, or like because I like sometimes I will struggle with an idea in code and then I just need to write it down
yeah,
like
yeah,
conceptually to like think my
exactly.
way
Yeah, I get
through it,
that totally.
but it's all a weird process. And the final question from appropriately Tony Finale,
Mm.
JRPGs. This is the lover hater
Um,
corner.
so I'm gonna cheekily assume that this question was kind of asked as a meme because
Okay.
uh in my friend group, so Tony's also a buddy, and it's been a little bit of a meme that I'm not particularly fond of JRPGs. There's a lot of things that I fundamentally kind of dislike about them. Um, just how much time they take up usually, and
Yeah.
Often the repetition of mechanics really grates at me. I see the appeal in a lot of instances, right? I really do see it. I don't want to
Right.
disparage anybody for that. Of course.
I as a JRPG enjoyer,
Mhm.
I'll tell you that an emulator's fast forward button is a great friend of mine.
I can understand that.
Hotkeying that to a controller press is real cool.
That's the move. Um, I guess my struggle is that Heather mentioned earlier Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter. That's
Yeah.
also a game I really admire, but I kind of also had a similar experience where at some point I kind of just stopped playing because uh, after all was said and done, it still was a game where I was going through the motions a lot with the combat. Um, Still a really cool thing that you should check out. It's a
Yeah.
very interesting game.
I've been playing. Well,
Um,
I've been playing through the all of them up to this point,
mm,
and
nice.
I was playing through 4 is most recently I've been on.
4 looks amazing visually.
Yes, oh my,
Say that. Yeah.
those games are like incredible looking.
Mm. I guess a little bit of a struggle is that a lot of the JRPGs that I used to kind of enjoy, or that I remember enjoying at the time,
Yeah.
I haven't revisited in a couple of years. I'm not really that confident that I would still like them. But I do like 2 games that always stuck out to me are Shin Megami Tensei 4
Okay.
and Etrian Odyssey. And both of those games, I really like the level design. I really like the sense of place, right? The sense of like meaningfully moving through a world. It's really hard to describe, but I think if you've played them, you'll really feel that. Especially in Shin Megami Tensei 4, where they put such a huge emphasis on like these little interactions where you crawl through little vents and all the environments are super detailed and there's a lot of ancillary NPC dialogue and NPCs always have like new things to say and the world just feels really complete.
Right.
I really appreciate that. And then the gameplay, the combat, uh, at 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 minimum, it's like pretty inoffensive and like it kind of gets out of your way. And there's still a lot of substance to enjoy beyond that. So those 2 games are still like games that I think about a lot.
Yeah, there was just like not too long ago. Today, like right as the show was starting. Uh, what are they? You know, if you're familiar with the game developer, Ouch.
I'm
Also,
not actually. Yeah.
also goes also by Super Blizzard or any number of different little things. A likewise commission contributor of Indiepocalypse.
Mm.
But anyway, she was talking about this idea of even if games are bad to play, they can still be good because I can just watch a log play. And like
That's funny. Yeah.
this idea of games are like a weird medium that are like you can't like just stick in a little box and like you can find like someone who really loves like Lagoon or whatever will play it for me so that I can see the interesting parts of it.
Mm. Yeah. I feel like I got less tight about this sort of stuff once I sort of. I feel like I mostly play games. Obviously, I enjoy games, right? But
Right.
like this
Yeah.
is obvious. But just the academic curiosity, um, to me is like way more of a motivating factor, you know.
Right. Right.
And when I always have that in the back of my mind, it's really hard to like regret playing a game. You know, you'll always learn something interesting in the end, even with games that you don't really vibe with.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
yeah,
that's
to me that's super cool.
the cool. I think the worst thing you can say about a piece of art is that you didn't think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like there's if there's nothing there, what have you got? You know. There's it leaves no imprint on you.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I know we're not supposed to address chat too much, but Hot
Oh,
Pockets here
go ahead.
saying, mentioning FF7R, like that's a game, Final Fantasy 7 Remake,
Yeah.
that I was not into at all. Um, but like the spite that the game filled me with,
Yeah.
I'd say overall it was productive. You know,
Right.
uh I did have sort of meaningful conclusions from it.
I,
So
as
yeah.
someone who has not played it all, I'm also like fascinated by it just in terms of like the fact that it takes this idea of confronting Final Fantasy VII 25 years later when its story has been expanded so much,
Yeah.
and like Zack was not a character when Final Fantasy VII came out. Like he's in Final Fantasy VII, but he's not really like a character.
Yeah.
But he's since had his own game in like anime years or whatever, and like this addressing like a legacy is I think a super interesting thing.
Yeah. Like even as much as I didn't like the sort of path getting there, by the end I was like, you know what, I kind of what you're doing here with this game is kind of interesting. You know, it's kind of audacious.
Right.
I can at least like respect that.
Yeah, especially when you get so very little of that at that scale of game.
Yeah.
Like the boldest thing you often get is like mediocre prestige television,
Yeah. Sure.
which is a whole other thing with games where it's like, what if we took prestige television but we just told worse stories with them, less engaging stories, because we have to chop them up with video game crafting systems. What do video games have crafting systems in them? That's the question.
I definitely I died a little bit when I saw the crafting tab in Resident Evil 4 Remake, the recent gameplay.
What?
Um
Yeah.
yeah. You craft ammo now. Doesn't have to be bad. I'm not dooming quite yet. I think
Yeah.
it still can be acceptable, but like it's hard not to be like cautious about that sort of thing.
Yeah. Crafting is very weird because it's like you can also. I talked earlier on this show about how I've talked on the show a couple of weeks about how kind of I'm into the Evil Within 2, which but it is also like it has crafting in it, but it's also I think crafting can be interesting in survival horror where it's like
Yeah.
that game uses the same core material for all the ammo types,
Yeah.
which I think can then lend itself to interesting trade-offs of like, do I want more magnum ammo or do I want more pistol ammo? What do I think I'm going to run into?
Yeah. I did like the similar thing in The Last of Us, for example, where the same materials that you use for, I think it was a med kit, are also used for a Molotov, which are super different
Yeah,
types of resources, right? And that's a really interesting choice.
right.
Um,
It's
and there's
just
some stuff in the game that kind of muddies that a little bit, but like still really interesting idea. So yeah.
yeah. There's games are cool. So
I agree.
can I say something? I want to. Games are really games don't game game directors need to look at movies and see why they're good. I feel like we need to drag 90% of game like cutscene directors into like a cinema 101 courses or something.
I see what you mean.
Yeah. Like
Even better solution. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go on.
Even better solution. Just have fewer cutscenes,
Yeah,
or
right.
like no cutscenes. Yeah, like
Like
I'm very absolutist with this stuff.
I found very recently when everyone was sharing because of that new Silent Hill, and like you couldn't find a better example of like, okay, maybe now listen, maybe maybe the trailer just didn't show it, maybe they don't actually have that shot in it, or maybe they do have that very one of the iconic shots from Silent Hill 2 of him looking in the mirror, the one that you constantly
Oh
see
yeah, of course.
and how like one is like and like the reason behind it is like it's so subtle, but it feels like or it's so obvious why it works compared to the newer one.
Yeah.
The camera is pulled out like a few inches, you know?
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, there's all this, I guess to talk about
Yeah.
Silent Hill 2 specifically, all this weird extra sort of blunt, kind of not subtle at all emotion that they're adding, like with James sort of shivering and all these
Yeah.
like intense close-ups. Feels very tacky, feels very not in the spirit of the game. Not optimistic about it.
Right. And that original shot is not subtle. It's like it's like he's looking at another version of himself. It's like not a subtle shot. It's very obvious what they're trying to convey. But because the camera's pulled back far enough, you can see that it's clearly trying to make you feel like there are two Jameses in that moment. Rather than just a man looking in a mirror, which is what the new one looks like, which is like, I think why people are like very... I've heard a lot of stuff about Bloober Team, so none of it's good.
Yeah.
But Ziad, we are approaching the end of our time here. Maybe the other people want to dunk on Bloober Team. We don't know.
The floor's open, yeah.
But thank you for being on this show with me here.
Thank you for having me. That was fun, yeah. I hope I did well.
Yeah,
I hope I didn't embarrass myself.
Well, I do grade all of you after this, and I'll send you your report cards when we're done. So we'll find out after that. Make sure to check your email.
All right. Thanks, Professor.
No problem. Don't call me Professor.
That actively made me start sweating.
Yeah, I get very... I work my hardest to avoid being in a position of authority in this, despite paying people money and that sort of thing. I don't like I never liked the idea of like, I'm not doing this to become someone's goddamn boss.
Yeah.
I ruined it.
That's all right. I'll just take your resignation on Monday and we'll call it even. Until then, well, I'll be back in like a minute. Goodbye.
Yeah, one of
Welcome
my
back
friends...
to Indiepocalypse Radio, the second of three surprise reintroductions of the show. That was Drank Coffee, Screen Gawking by Samir Saunders. The gang's all here. Hello, gang. Are you all here?
Hello.
Hi.
I am not here at all.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm here. Yeah, sorry.
Two-thirds of us are here. Or 3/4 if you consider me being here, but I think it's a given that I'm here. I hope. Vibe check on Bloober Team. How are we feeling about Bloober Team?
Screw him.
Oh no.
Not a fan.
Yeah. I like that part where that baby keeps running into the wall over and over again.
Yeah, that's basically all I've seen from them, and that's enough where I'm like, these people shouldn't be in charge. These people shouldn't be anywhere near an IP like Silent Hill.
I watched I've seen that clip and I've watched a playthrough of The Medium and
The Medium. That
game,
sure is a game.
Yes, that's the game where victims or abusers are the real victims. Is that what that game is?
Something like that.
Yeah, that's about what I heard as well. I haven't played any other games, so I don't want to speak like authoritatively on it. But just nothing I heard made me optimistic about this remake or just any the prospect of playing any of their games. I'm just not interested at all.
Yeah, I think that baby clip is a clip that everyone should watch to understand. I think that because it feels like a perfect encapsulation of like gesturing towards scary things but not quite understanding any of it.
I mean, the baby thing is funny. You know, you can like enjoy it in isolation.
Yeah, you don't
and
need
then not look at the weird, offensive like mental health stuff.
Yes, that is like it's a perfect example of that of that baby running should mean something, but it doesn't mean anything. Like none of it means anything. It's just scary things because they're scary. Mental health is scary. Babies are scary.
Oh no.
Creepy houses are scary, but no one thought about why.
where the monsters are a manifestation of your trauma?
No,
What the
monsters are
fuck?
scary things that look creepy. Maybe Bloober Team is that Garth Marenghi quote, you know.
Oh
But
yeah.
but even more far gone.
I think with a lot of like horror games, like I haven't played any of their games either, but the vibe I get is like sort of the way horror games have changed over the past like decade, like ever since like Let's Plays became a
Yes.
thing. Uh, People design horror games to be streamed, you know,
Right.
and that's and I think I imagine that that's the approach that Bloober is going to take with Silent Hill. Because even like I even felt that from Resident Evil 8. Like I felt like Resident Evil 8 was like a streaming game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be Silent Hill, which is a depressing thought. You know, Silent Hill is like a game like Silent Hill 2, especially, is like too important to be just throwing it around willy nilly like that.
That's the really weird thing about movies, you know, or not movies, about games compared to something like a movies or an album or something, where you remake it into something completely different.
Yeah, it's very strange. And then people, you know, I think there is a big prevalence with like the idea that like the remake automatically becomes the the definitive version of the game, and
Right.
a lot of people I think are gonna jump into Silent Hill 2 thinking it's like an adequate replacement. And you know, like I try not to worry about that kind of thing because ultimately like I can't stop what other people do, you know.
Yeah.
But it is depressing.
Yeah. I've talked about this on Twitter actually as well, but like I know I can just ignore it, right? I know it doesn't affect me. I know I can just not play it, but I don't know it's petty, but it really does bother me that like some kids are just like, you know, they're gonna see Silent Hill 2 and they're gonna think this is Silent Hill 2. They think this is the version of that game. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very, very strange. Like, how often does like a remake supplant an original in like imagine if that early 2000s The Thing just became the version of The Thing you could get, you know.
Mm,
Oh. And then, like it's so I think it's with video games, it's because they're so tied to like hardware, you
Right.
know, and like a lot of it is just not like future proofed, I guess. So a lot of games like you know, the problem I think with with Silent Hill specifically was like the reason the HD port sucked so bad was a lot of like the source code was lost, I think. So like even just preserving games is just so much more of a hurdle
Right.
than I think other mediums.
Well, people.
Where it's like you just
yeah.
have an MP3 file and then you're good forever.
Right. Right. You have a film
I
print that you will forever turn into something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's also just a little bit of a lack of appreciation for mechanics in general,
Yes.
where we kind of tend to look at mechanics sort of as a means to the end that is the experience, right?
Right.
Rather than just the mechanics as like something valid on their own. In this case, for example, you know, fixed camera angles, tank controls, inventory. I mean, Silent Hill doesn't really have inventory management, but just all the stuff that you would associate with that era of games. It's kind of looked at as this ancillary, not that important, crucial elements to the experience.
Yeah.
What's crucial is the story, the vibe, whatever. I mean, those are great things, right? But um, it's really disheartening to see just how easily those things sort of get quote unquote updated
Yes. Yes.
in the
That's that's exactly what I was thinking with this idea that gameplay gets upgraded. That it's like a linear evolutionary thing.
exactly. Yeah.
That
Like over the shoulder third person controls, that's just what you do now. That's
right.
the way to do it.
Right.
Why would you do it any other way?
Right. And recently, when I played Control, I was like, because I'm like, oh wait, for a second I thought, how do games play like this when they're not over the shoulder, like cover based shooters? I'm like, oh, they play differently.
Hmm.
And then it was like, oh, they're still good, actually. It's just like a different approach to game design, when it's like, it doesn't have to be a cover-based regenerating health shooters, you know. It's not like one way to make it, like, it's why does Resident Evil 4 need a crafting system? What about that is like antiquated that needs to be updated?
Yeah, I have some suspicions. I mean, this specific one, I have some suspicions about why they may do that. Like maybe they want to spend less time sort of balancing the ammo distribution carefully, right? If you can craft your own ammo from
exactly,
repeated materials, then you can basically balance the difficulty for yourself, right? That takes the load off of the designers. That was my immediate first suspicion, which doesn't have to be bad, right? I think that's an okay solution if it works. But still, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm a real. That's always like the interesting sort of thing, because I've played. I think Resident Evil 4 is good. I've played it more than once time in my life.
Pretty good game.
Coming and screaming with bold takes here. I think Resident Evil 4 is good, but I mean, I don't know. Like there is. It's always very interesting, their approach to it, especially because like I use one gun for that whole game basically. You know, I use that Red 5 or whatever it's called for 99% of the game until I use the big gun for a big guy.
Nice.
And it's always like how design and resource management, like, and maybe there are people who don't like edge themselves with health, being like, I'll just wait till my next full heal. I will survive with 10% health forever. But that's
it is really cool. Oh, sorry.
No,
it is really cool how Resident Evil 4 came out so many years ago, but then it somehow managed to accommodate all these weird different playstyles.
Yeah.
And then simultaneously, it's still so streamlined. It's really easy to understand how everything works. That's artful. That's crazy.
I will say right now, if you're playing, if I sit down to play Resident Evil 4 Remake and I have Ashley behind me and I shoot a zombie in the head and she doesn't do a little fist pump, I think video games were a waste of time, honestly.
I agree. Yeah, that's what I'm going to be looking out for.
That is. There's that's one of the things that sticks with me in that game more than like anything, is like little character stuff that doesn't serve any functional purpose but makes it feel alive.
Generally, I don't like playing games where the main character is alone. It makes me really anxious. I don't know why. Like, especially when the scale of things are really, really big, and I'm like, I'm just a little guy, and everything's really big, and I just need a friend.
I got bad history, Robin. Most games are about little guys in big places.
I know, and I'm a little guy in a big place.
So interesting. Yeah, I'm like the complete opposite. I love when everybody just shuts up. I love when I'm by myself. I did a Vanquish playthrough today, and if there's one way to make that game better, it's to like get rid of all your little squad guys. Like, I could not care less about them. I love the one-man army feeling, you know? Yeah, I need that. But Ashley is cool. I respect that.
Yeah, you respect Ashley. I respect for my president's daughter. What I realized how much what's it called? That first Evil Villain is just such a, what's that guy? Why am I forgetting his name? Is that not Camille? Who's the guy?
Shinji Mikami.
Shinji Mikami. How much of that Shinji Mikami game that is? How much of that game is Resident Evil 4 2? You know,
like, I really got to play that one. I haven't played it at all.
It is a real 7 out of 10. I highly recommend Andrew 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
I love the 7 out of 10 worlds where it's like they're just taking weird swings. They're imperfect in places, but like well, it's things that I look at and go, I can see why people wouldn't like this.
Right.
Because then that it feels like when there's something that turns people off, there's something that turns me on to it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the space I want to occupy as an artist is be like incredibly divisive and like most people are just like, yeah, it had some ideas. Maybe
Yeah,
the execution wasn't the best.
that's such a. I remember when I saw. I realized this idea like the ideal film is something that's like 7.0 like when you do a quick Google search it's like 7.0 on IMDb but 98 Rotten Tomatoes. You're like, now I'm in for a good time.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I saw that when when I looked up when I was getting like the lore. I think that has a very similar score to that, and I love the lore. It's amazing, but I can see why a lot of people would hate that movie or like not like it at all.
That's actually interesting that you say that, Heather. Because like, I feel like I also appreciate a lot of divisive things in art, right?
Right.
But when it came to making my own stuff, I actually was really concerned with like, yeah, I want the highest amount of people to like, uh, be able to play this and like be like have it be
Right. Right.
as easy to get into as possible. Like
Right. I
for
feel that.
somehow, yeah, once it came to making my own thing, that was a huge concern, like on the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
That's.
Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. No, you
No,
go.
you go. No, you go.
Oh, no, no. I find with my own games and stuff, since I've been using it for a portfolio, since I started using it as a portfolio, I started to get really self-conscious of the things I was putting out. I really want to make more experimental, messy, emotional art, but I'm too scared to, I think.
Hmm.
Which,
Yeah.
that's the nature of
I
it,
get
isn't
that.
it?
Yeah, I was gonna say something along those lines. Like when I made my first game, it was like sort of like a survival horror, like dungeon crawler sort of thing. Like that game, I was so obsessed with like the perfectionism of it, and like everybody needs to love this. Like but like that sort of perfectionism just like really ate at me, and the whole project took literally like 3 years, and like I was so on and off developing it. Um,
Mm.
and
Mm.
with every game I've made since then, and in Quantum Bummer Blues especially, was like, I need this. Whereas like I need to force myself to release something that's not perfect, where that is like I need to get that perfectionism out of my brain and just make something that's imperfect because like you can't chase perfectionism forever because
You're right, yeah.
it's never gonna live up to the ideal you have in your head. You know,
Yeah.
you just have to sort
Yeah.
of embrace it because somebody is going to be able to look at that imperfection and be like, I love this, you know, like outsider art like that. Like that's how I am about like a lot of outsider artists that are like, you know, super messy and stuff. I love all that.
I think there's a lot of power in being able to complete something because
Exactly. Yeah.
perfectionism can just
Yeah.
stop you in your tracks. And I think one of my friends, Hannah, she kind of coached me into this idea of just make something really bad and release it. And I was like, I can't do it. I
Mhm.
can't do it. I can't, it's too hard. And when I released my first game, it wasn't like perfect. There was so many things I could add to it, but it was like the way I describe them is they're time capsules. That's
Mm.
why I try and complete them so quickly because they encapsulate like a small snippet of my life, a feeling, something I wanted to learn, and then they achieve that. If the goal is very small, then I can still achieve it. Even if the game is not perfect, there's something really nice about releasing it.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of
Yeah.
the. Oh, sorry. Uh,
No, no. Number one rule is everyone gets to talk before me. Everyone gets top priority over me.
that's really sweet. Yeah, there's like one little vignette thing in my in Disco EP. It's called
Mm.
Giga Slammer. And it's like a little arcade game, basically. And I just remember when the game came out and like the day after I tweeted, don't take Giga Slammer too seriously. Too much RNG. Uh, it's like yeah, like you as a creator, you're just very aware of it sounds so obvious, right? But you're so aware of like the little limitations of your stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, but like I think if you can like kind of embrace them, um, then if I guess that's the thing, Giga Slammer as an example, like it just worked in the context of what the overall experience was.
Mm.
So and like nobody told me it had too much RNG, right?
Right.
Personally, I felt that way, but if I take it too seriously as a game, but like nobody ever raised that concern because it just doesn't, it wouldn't occur to you because it's not that kind of experience.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, I think if you're sincere with what you do and if you embrace it, then your audience is also gonna feel it, and
Exactly.
they're
Yeah.
hopefully gonna take it the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that becoming more commonplace maybe, or like it's. I think that's sort of because if you're coming up into games for a while, there was like, what's your reference points? It's like what, like GDC talks, It's
Mm.
there's not it's hard to find a DIY peer in the same way that it has been like even the last couple of years. And even like releasing games, there is like what's a battle of the bands but video games,
Hmm.
Mm.
what's a zine fair but video games? They don't really exist. So it's kind of like the idea of a complete game is something you obsess about being perfect and spend years and years and years and years on, because it's like you need to make a proper video game, and it's how you get caught up in that, I think.
Mm.
But now I think it's easier to get like make a little thing that people will care about.
The community that I really love, but I'm not a part of, is the entire Bitsy community. They just have
Yes.
my heart. Like every time I feel really awful about the world, I just search Bitsy games and I play a bunch of them, and I'm like, everything is good, everything is fine now
Yeah.
because Bitsy exists.
Bitsy is I'm the number one. Indiepocalypse here is like number one Bitsy booster. Bitsy is
Nice.
is leading the medium forward, is dragging video games forward, whether they like it or not.
It's just a fantastic way of telling stories and
Yeah.
poetry, and just it's so beautiful. And I think I keep making the idea that this I don't know how good the concept of like continuing to make games until you make something so beautiful that it moves you
Yeah.
is
Mm.
how good that is as a concept, but I keep making stuff or like sketching stuff out because I want to make something that makes me feel as good as these games make me feel.
Yes. No. I
Mm.
think I've found there's nothing more satisfying than going back and reading like your own work and be like, oh, that, and laughing at your own work after the fact.
Right, right.
You're like, oh, this was funny. I wrote something funny. Like it's sort of like time, like Robin, like you're saying about time capsules, about opening up your own time capsule and then like being impressed by yourself from 4 years ago
Yeah. Mm.
and being like, oh wow, I can't believe I made this. I was good at something.
Mm.
Yeah.
If I look at a thing of mine from 4 years ago and I don't think it's cringe, that's like a huge success.
Yeah.
Like that's saying a lot.
Right.
I think the oldest game on my itch profile was I made it when I was 18, and I still like I keep it up there because I love it. I love what it
Mm.
represented for me, and I'm a different person to the person who made that game. And I made like a different game when I was 20 about the same experience I had. Um, I'm like beating around the bushes about psychosis. And I wrote one game so when I was 20 about psychosis and one when I was 18, and the tone of them are so different. The most recent game is so hopeful and so gentle and loving and human, whereas the other one is more messy and more like upset and angry. And I like looking back and seeing those two differences and seeing how much I've grown.
Yeah, there's because that's like sort of, I think, the beauty of games as personal art, is that they're something that's inside of you that you need to get out of you, and those
Yeah.
things in you, those 2 years apart, were different things.
Mm.
There was like we're not all this. As it turns out, we're not all the same people for our entire lives.
Yeah, we're not.
we all grow day by day. Theoretically, we all grow day by day and have different experiences. That's the terrifying idea of like, I've thought about the idea of like class reunions. I'm like, I don't know any of those people. I certainly hope that I don't know any of those people anymore.
Right.
Like if they were the same people that I knew in high school, that's what have you been doing your whole life?
Yeah.
I feel like
You
Yeah.
gotta update your. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna make a stupid joke. You gotta update your personality every time there's a new Ryan Gosling movie.
You're right. I routinely I don't trust my taste from 5 years ago.
Neither do I.
I'm like, what did I like then? It doesn't. It's not even like 5 years ago. I was a teen, despite me very, very cool and ahead of the times. Keeping current, but it's. I think it's important to be able to reevaluate yourself, and making art is a good version of yourself that you leave lying around constantly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
Nice
think
way of putting it.
that's sort of a problem I've had where like I work too slowly. I'm not as like prolific as I want to be with that sort of time capsule thing, I guess.
Right.
And like I actually just released like a Bitsy project a couple weeks ago. And like that was my first experience like using that engine, and I was like, I think that's probably a good outlet for that kind of thing. Like just the short sort of time capsule-y stuff. Like
Yeah.
I might have to look into that.
Yeah.
It's cute.
Right.
Yeah, you look at Kamiya, and he's directed like 3 AAA games, but it's age 25, and you're
Right.
like, what am I doing?
Right. But then you look at someone who probably didn't start till they were like 40, and then you're like, I've got plenty of time ahead of me.
Right.
It's
Like,
never too late.
Yeah. Right.
There's no use comparing yourself to other people's timelines
Exactly.
because your pace is the right pace, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Because like for all the people for all like the people you're behind, there's just as many people who you're way ahead of.
Mm.
And it's like one of those impossible tasks to like. It's what you want to get out of it,
Mm.
So do you compare yourself to child actors who have been acting since they were 6 and they're superstars, or do you compare yourself to like Harrison Ford types who were like carpenters until they were 40? It's all life,
Hmm.
Mm.
It turns out we invented this all. We all made it all up. So there's no right thing to do anything. Think of the bliss you could live as an animal.
It's a really unusual question, but if you were an animal, which animal would you be?
A raccoon. They have little hands.
I love that. They have little grabby hands.
They do. There were 2 real fat ones in the yard this morning.
Oh, hell yeah. I love that.
Shit.
One got very scared when he saw me try to run up a tree, and then realized I was not a threat and went back to eating.
Oh.
Maybe being like a turtle. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Would be super cool because you live super fucking long and you just
That's true.
see a lot.
Yeah. My answer has always been manatees because they're cute as hell. And
Aw.
that's like that's the extent of it. They just chill out and eat all day. That's how I'm trying to be.
Some kind of robin. A robin. Oh my god.
Ah,
A
yes.
robin. Yeah.
The
That-
that makes
Rio
sense.
of birds. No,
Yeah.
sorry, the Ken
I
of
was gonna
birds. My
say-
mistake.
I was gonna say crow, and then I realized I have a name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I saw that once on Twitter, and I can't not think about that anymore that way. I saw someone once refer to robins and blue jays as the Ryu and Ken of birds. And now it's all I think about when I see them.
Oh no.
Because it's like, I see a nice blue jay coming around, I'm like, ah, yes, the Rio of birds. Hello, welcome to my yard. But yeah, there is corvids. I just like corvids are cool guys in general.
Oh, COVID's fantastic.
They're
I'm like, I'm making a game about birds, but there's a bird. It's called a bird of mystery.
Yeah.
And the dead animal is a crow because of murder of crows.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes,
The wordplay writes itself.
it
Honestly.
really does. It's so much fun.
Yeah, when I realized that bird, when I saw a bird, and I was like, why is it hopping so much? I'm like, right, why would birds walk when they fly? So of course it hops, because it's like a natural way of moving for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're appreciate the nature, you know? They're cool guys.
Yeah.
We live with them.
Cool dudes.
We're forcing those little dudes out of their houses all the time.
Yeah.
That's why they're like turkeys in the middle of Boston.
Uh,
They don't
Wow.
belong in there.
what
That's
are you doing in there?
There's a city. I saw one in a parking lot.
Oh my gosh!
I'm like, dude, what are you doing here?
What's up, man? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you there?
I mean, I live more rural, so I expect to see them wandering all over the place,
Yeah.
but not in the city.
Yeah, what are you doing there? Get back home.
Yeah. Oh, wait, you can't because we turned it into condos.
Yep.
Folks, there's a spectrum between ecofascism and not burning down every forest, you know, and I'm in the middle. We ought to let animals still have their homes.
Mm.
It's all, but we're animals, but maybe we just don't need quite so big ones.
Yeah.
We could have little burrows too.
As long as we have video games, then
Yes, as
I'm
long as
cool.
we have what we all need are man caves,
Mm-hmm.
milk crates, TVs, and a PS3.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
love a nest.
The frame
That'd be
picture of
beautiful.
Satoru Iwata.
Yes.
A small nest, or correct, a small nest forged out of leftover T-shirts.
Yes, a little nest that I can bundle myself in.
Speaking of little nests that we can bundle ourselves in, this show is where I'm wrapping up this little show out of the little twigs and branches that are our conversations.
Oh,
Nice one. That's a good one.
Thank
That's a
you.
good
That
one.
is a segue.
You do this.
That
enough,
is a
you do
segue.
this
That's
enough
definitely what they call
times.
that.
You run your mouth enough. You eventually run into a place you're happy with. But I'm gonna try and close this down. Show. I try to keep it a brisk 2 hours long. And because I know I'm bad at closing this, I'm gonna try stopping it before 2 hours.
Ooh.
Because I know by the time we all finally stop, it'll be 2. Anyway, glad to have you all here on the show, in the zine, in general, making games. I say that a lot, but I feel like I don't say it enough. I love.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I love games, and I love doing whatever I can to help keep making people make them. You know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really it makes a big difference for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I remember a long time ago, I think it might have even been the Catamites who said indie games is just trading the same $5 back and forth forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what if we were trading the same $20 back and forth forever? Surely that's an improvement.
Exactly.
Mm.
And that's my goal here. But my goal here right now in the show is to actually try and end it. So, Ziad, what have you got to promote? Where can people find your stuff?
I have a Twitter, I guess. That's just where I dump all my fucking vomit.
That's a good. I mean, vomit is a good thing. You ought to dump somewhere.
Yeah. It's Wonder Magenta. So the word wonder and then the color magenta, just one word. Yeah, just if I do anything, literally anything, you'll hear about it there, and also like all my other stuff is linked in my bio. So yeah.
Perfect. Going around the circle, Robin, what about you? Where can people find your stuff?
I'm chaotic_logic5 on Twitter. I need to change that. But it links to my games and my WordPress, which I need to change the website for because it looks really bad right now the way I've done it. Yeah, everything's on my Twitter. You can see all my game stuff on my Twitter, and I chat sometimes on there. And you can also DM me if you follow me.
Look at that, and you have a little commission tab now. Look at that. Hey there.
I do. I wonder
know
who
that-
commissioned me.
I didn't see that there before because I guess technically it didn't exist before.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, yeah. That WordPress is Games Robin.
Yeah.
WordPress.com.
That's me. I'm Games Robin.
Yeah, it's what you do and who you are.
It did, yeah.
Just don't change either of those in the
Yeah.
in the near future.
Not planning on it.
But if you do, you'll have to change one of those.
Yeah.
Heather, your stuff, where is it?
Most of my stuff, you can find it on my Twitter. My handle is Goofy Gogs, so that's GOUFYGOGGS on Twitter. I also have a YouTube channel where I discuss games. That's under the same name, and then my itch page you can find on my Twitter, but it's the name Few Prime, where you can find all my games, and that's about it.
Perfect. That's everyone. And I recommend you follow all of these people. That is like the point of this whole thing is to be like, hey, there's cool people here. I'm putting them in a big pile so they're easy to find.
Nice.
And then I'm taking all the work out of it. You don't even have to think about. You don't have to look at itch and go, how do I find anyone? You just go to Indiepocalypse, and there's 10 people right there for you. You have to it's I'm trying to make it as easy as possible. My thing, right? I do stuff. It's called Indiepocalypse. It's a monthly anthology. I recommend you ought to buy it. If you buy issues 32 or 33, these people here, if enough people do it, eventually, let's say 6 to 8 months from now, they'll get like $7 on PayPal, you know?
Yeah.
But it's something.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
It's something.
It's all appreciated.
I was listening to podcasts. When I made my podcast transition from nerd stuff to alt LA comedy and hearing them talk about getting royalty checks, I'm like, that rules. The feeling of I did something once in my life and then I will get paid for it forever. I think, yeah, that's cool. Even if it's not very much money, I think it's nice to get some money because unfortunately we all need it still.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we can just forage for our branches and nuts and survive in a beautiful world where we don't, but we still need it. And I'm trying to siphon it from video games the best I can into little games about blood and ghosts. Not at the same time. But yeah, if you want to join Indiepocalypse, it's /submit. And sometimes you don't get in the first time, sometimes you don't get in the second time, but sometimes you get in the third time. It all depends on my vibe, I think, friend of the zine and front runner games of 2022 Taylor McHugh, I think, was a multiple time submitter, and she's put out the best stuff of the year basically,
Right, yeah.
And it all really depends on my vibe at the time of like what games I include. And I've started very intentionally. What's the word I'm looking for? Adding a waiting list to let people know that like your game is good, but there can only be 10 in a month. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, that'll be good to have.
Yeah, so it's nice to I feel like that's been an upgrade. But speaking of upgrades, I'm trying to upgrade game dev around the world with the local scene showcase. That's not.
Oh.
Yeah,
No, you got it.
I love local scenes. I love the idea of you go on Bandcamp and they're like, here's Singapore's best shoegaze. Here's the Singapore shoegaze scene because that exists, because local scenes exist, and because like your local scene is how you get support outside of like if you have no money or resources or good connections, you can go down the street to your local meetup and talk about games there and support each other. And it can be hard if you don't. How do you network when you don't live in the US, and don't have like, you can only yell at the same 5 people. You can only barge. What's the word I'm looking? You can only be an online reply guy until you wear down people long enough. That's no way to live. But so I'm saying support your local scene is what I'm trying to say, and I'm gonna hopefully we got stuff in the U.S. We've got stuff in Europe, stuff in South America, people all over the world. Cool videos to see what people are doing in other parts of the world. And aside from that, I am putting my foot in the ground right now. I'm forcing myself by announcing right now that I'm gonna September 2023. Mark your calendar. It's the Pizza Pranks Game Fair.
Oh shit!
I'm saying it. I'm gonna that way. I have to really hold myself to doing it. The fundamental idea is that a bunch of people will sign up and they will all submit games around the exact all submit game or release new games, rather I should say, at the month of September. And it's like you would a zine fair where you all debut everyone debuts new works around the same time because it's an event. And I'm trying to figure out how to get people to support small games in 2023 as I did in 2022 and 2021. In 2020, I've been doing this for a long time. Christ, I did not realize it's going to be 3 years very soon. But speaking of 3 years, to avoid this show being 3 years long.
Hey! Good segue.
The final segue. Like the Blark man himself, I'm boarding my final segue off into the horizon. and bidding this show farewell. Heather, Robbins, thank you all for being here very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for having us.
It was great.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.